Recording in progress.
Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to our Bhakti Vaibhav class. We'll begin with our prayers. Om Jnanatmayandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Tadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Vadagamat Shri Guru Vaishnavansha Shri Rupam Sagrajamata Sarvana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sarvana Dalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinamadaru Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Pramukute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindaveshwari Krishnapano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Mancha Kalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Swami Nitinamini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So everyone, we are discussing from second canto of Srimad Bhagvatam, and we have completed till verse number 14. We are on 14th verse.
Yes, in 15th onwards, Srila Sukadeva Goswami tells why Bhakti is supreme by compared to study.
Yes, okay, yes. Right. So we'll continue from the 15th verse. So in the beginning of in the end of the first canto, Parikshit Maharaj asks few questions to Sukadeva Goswami. What's the duty of a person who is about to die? What is the duty of everyone in this world? What one should hear, chant, remember, what one should not hear, not chant, not remember. So in response to this, Deva Goswami describes how Bhakti is the only thing which is to be remembered, the holy names of the Lord. Tasmad Bharat Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari Shrotavya Krititabhyascha Smartavyascha Ichchata Abhayam. So you have told three things. Which is the best of this? Ketan Nirvidyamananam Chatam Akutobhayam Yoginam Nipnanitam Harir Nam Anukirtanam. Of all these three, the chanting of the names is the best. So that is the conclusion which Deva Goswami gives. And then Parikshit Maharaj gets a doubt. Well, this is a long process. I have only 7 days to live. So he says, Arey, what to speak of 7 days? Katvango Nama Rajarshe, Katwang king was there. He had only 2 muhurtas. You have 7 days to live. 1 moment is enough. So just remember the names of the Lord, chant the names of the Lord, and you will attain perfection. So after hearing this, Sukadeva Goswami goes on to describe another popular opinion, because in the assembly there were many other followers, practitioners of other paths. They were also sitting, Jnanis, Karmis, Yogis. So in the 15th verse, from 15th to 39th verse onward, in this section, he gives another popular opinion, path of Bhakti Mishra Jnana. So we'll recite this 15th verse. Antakale tu Purusha Agate Gata Sadvasaha Chandhyada Sangha Shastrena Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam.
At the last stage of one's life, one should be bold enough not to be afraid of death. But one must cut off all the attachments of the material body, and everything pertaining to it, and all desires thereof.
Yes. So extension box layega, otherwise Antakale tu Purusha, at the end of one's life, Agate gata sadhvasaha. One should be bold enough not to be afraid of death. Gata sadhvasaha, without any fear of death. Chindya, cut off all the attachments by asanga shastrena, by the weapon of detachment. Spriham dehen yechatam, and everything pertaining to it, and all the desires thereof. So there was a question asked, what should the dying man do? So now Shukdev Goswami is answering, what should a dying man do in this world? He is giving the path of Ashtanga Yoga. So, he'll describe this process of Ashtanga Yoga and a few other paths. And then in the second chapter, he'll give his own opinion. What is his view about it? So he says what a devotee should do, what a yogi should do. At the end of one's life, one should cut off all the attachments by practicing this Ashtanga Yoga. You should perform yoga to enter into Brahman. So that is the process of Jnana Marga or Ashtanga Yoga. So after giving up this body by your will, that is how a yogi does. That's the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Oh. Can remind after 1 hour. Somebody can remind me. 8 ghanta chal jaye. We'll take a break for 5 minutes and then. So, in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also we know there are 2 paths, path of light and path of darkness. So a yogi, he can decide his future destination. And that's what Shukdev Goswami is telling here. One should perform yoga to enter into Brahman. So in this verse, he speaks of the excellence of yoga process, the Jnana Marga, which was held by some of the sages. Some of the sages, they were having this opinion of attaining perfection by Ashtanga Yoga. So that is another opinion which Shukdev Goswami is giving. This is not his own opinion. His own opinion he'll give at the end of the 2nd chapter. So Prabhupada writes in the purport. Somebody can read the purport.
The foolishness of gross materialism is that people think of making a permanent settlement in this world, although it is a settled fact that one has to give up everything here that has been created by valuable human nature. Great statesmen, scientists, philosophers, etc., who are foolish without any spiritual, think that this life of a few years only is all in all, and that is nothing more after death. This core kind of knowledge within the so-called learned circles of the world is killing the vitality of human energy, and the awful result is being keenly felt. And yet the foolish materialistic men do not care about what is going to happen in the next life.
Okay, so that's how you can see in the purport, Prabhupada is not going into the technical explanation of what is being described here. It's just focusing on the essence. So there are 2 things. There is something called as bhavartha. So one is the technical explanation of the verse, and one is giving the actual meaning of the verse which is being conveyed, the lesson which is being conveyed. Bhav kya hai? What is the emotion, what is the teaching which is being conveyed through this verse? So Prabhupada, he tells in one of the conversations that I like to give bhavarth. I'm not interested in giving the technical explanation of the verse. So very few places Prabhupada gives the technical explanation of the verse. He always focuses on the essence, bhava, and he describes wherever he gets a chance, he gives the essence. The essence of Bhagavad Gita, the essence of Bhagavatam is Smartavya Satatam Vishnu Vismartavyo na Jatuchit. That is the essence. So therefore, here also Prabhupada is focusing on Antakale, how a person should engage his life in such a way that he can remember Krishna at the time of death. But people in this world, they are so foolish, they're just spending their very vital energy in acquiring things of the world. Then Prabhupada quotes this verse from Bhagavad Gita. One should know that identity of individual living entity is not even lost. not lost even after the end of this body. Natvevaham jatuna asam natvam neme janadika. That's what Prabhupada is quoting here. And then he writes, the best type of body is a spiritual body. And after a few statements, Prabhupada writes, foolish people attach more importance to temporary life. And thus, foolish leaders make appeals to body and bodily relations. So this body is temporary, and Prabhupada writes up to sometimes, the body is temporary. And what is death? Death is nothing but sleeping for a few months. And is death. Sleeping for a few months in order to develop another term of bodily engagement. That is what is death, Prabhupada writes. And whatever karma we have done, according to that, we get a new body. Therefore, one only has to change the aspiration during the course of this present body. And for this, there is need of training. So whatever we are doing in Krishna consciousness, we are trying to do this, changing the aspiration. This is the greatest shift a living entity has to make from the aspiration of enjoyment in this world to aspiring to serve Krishna. That is the greatest shift. That is the most difficult shift which a living entity can make in this world. Because of tendency to enjoy, 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita says, Purusha prakriti sthohi hunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangasya sadasat yoni janmasu. Because people, 13.21 I think, people, because living entities, they have the desire to enjoy. Hunkte prakriti jan guna. Therefore, they take birth in the higher and lower species of life. From this to serving Krishna, that is a shift. And this training can be begun at any stage of life or even a few seconds before death. Anytime it can start. That's how it can be started anytime. But the usual procedure is for one to get the training from early life. Kaumaram Achare. So then Prabhupada gives in detail about how materialists, they are just enjoying the family relationships, not understanding the value of life. And then after a few lines, Prabhupada writes, the best thing is that everyone voluntarily give up family relations by transferring the attachment from family, society, country, etc. to devotional service. So that is a voluntary shift we have to make. Otherwise, all these attachment is binding us. Deha patya kalatra adishu atma sainyeshu satsopi desham pramatto nidhanam pashyanapi na pashyati. This was came right earlier. People of this world, they think they are these things are my soldiers. And then he says, one must have a chance for better desires. There is no chance of giving up such desires, morbid desires. Desire is a concomitant factor. One cannot become desireless. In Bhagavad Gita 2.70, I think. Vihaya kaman yas sarvan pumam sharati nispriha nirmama nirahankara sashanti madhigachati. This 2.17. In that Prabhupada writes, what is real desirelessness? And somebody, I know, it is the real desirelessness, Prabhupada writes. I think it is desire to serve Krishna. That is real desirelessness. We cannot become desireless. The real desirelessness is desire to serve Krishna. Otherwise, all the desires of the world, they bind a living entity. But only this desire to serve Krishna brings freedom, brings liberation. So 2.70. Okay.
70, no?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, 2.71. Vihaya Kaman is 2.71. In this, Prabhupada writes, real desirelessness is desire for satisfaction of Krishna, not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. So desires cannot be abolished. So one must develop the desires for returning home back to God, and automatically the material desires for material gain, material honor, material popularity will diminish. So the more we develop this desire to serve Krishna, to go back to Godhead, the more the material desires will go down. So that is the understanding. Perfection of such service attitude. So Prabhupada writes, everybody in this world is trying to serve. But only thing which can liberate one is
Is it connected? No.
just 1 minute. Okay, so Prabhupada is describing how all the desires, if they are dovetailed in service of Krishna, that is real desirelessness. And Prabhupada writes last few lines of the purport. Beginning from top executive head down to the insignificant pauper, everybody is rendering service. Nobody can say, I am not serving anyone. But the perfection of such service is attained only by serving Krishna. So that's how he begins the process, begins the description of Jnana Marga or Ashtanga or Bhakti Mishra Jnana. Then in the 16th verse, he describes Yam, Niyam, and Asana.
107.
So,
Guest house, first floor. 107.
we'll recite the 16th ones. Grihat Pravrajito Dhiraha Punya Tirtha Jala Vikta Asi
Asino Asane. One should leave home and practice self-control. In a sacred place, he should bathe regularly and sit down in a lonely place duly sanctified.
Okay, so now he is describing Yama, Niyama, and Asana. First requirement for practicing Ashtanga Yoga is leave home. Yogi and Yogini is coming together, they cannot practice Ashtanga Yoga. So that is what is the current yoga tradition. But first, one should leave home with complete self-control, dhiraha. So first and second line describes Yam and Niyam. First, leave home, control the senses. Then, Punya Tirtha Jalaplutaha. Go to a sacred place and bathe regularly. And then, third line describes Asana. Yam, Niyam, and then Asana. Shuchau, Vivikta Asino. Stay in a solitary place. Vidhivat. And sanctified. It should be sanctified. Vidhivat. So Yam means don'ts, Niyam means do's. So Bhagavad Gita also describes Shushau Deshe Pratisthapya Sthiram Asanam Atmanah Nati Utritam Nati Nicham Chaila Jina Kushottaram. One should sit in a sanctified place on asana, neither too high nor too low. क्यों ऐसा बोलते हैं? Neither too high nor too low. Asana should not be too high nor too low.
Because if it is very too high, then there is a fear of height. And if it is too low, then there may be,
Speculation चल रहा है. Okay, any other thoughts? Can unmute yourself, anybody like speak. Just common sense understanding. अगर आप घर में चैंटिंग कर रहे हैं और खिड़की के पास खड़े हैं तो क्या होगा? You'll get distracted और नीचे कौन जा रहा है उधर क्या चल रहा है? If it is too high, you naturally get to see the scenery of the forest. You will get distracted. And if it is too low, all the insects and other things will trouble you. So that's why Nati Uchritam, Nati Nicham. So Prabhupada Chakravarti Thakur writes in the purport, Dhira represents the first stage of Yama, that is Brahmacharya. First stage is brahmacharya, celibacy. And then sitting on the asan. And asan should be made up of kusha, deer skin, and cloth. First kusha grass, then on that deer skin, and then it should be covered with a cloth. So that is the third stage. Yam, niyam, asan. And then chanting the 3 syllables, Om, combined as Om repeatedly, that is called as pranayam. That is the 4th stage. And by practice of pranayam, one should make the mind motionless. Mind should be controlled. So that is how this Shukadeva Goswami is describing. And then
Motionless means what exactly?
mind doesn't go anywhere. If the yogi is focusing on the Lord, so mind will not go anywhere. At present, our mind goes everywhere else. No.
In chanting, though it goes.
Chanting में अभी कहीं पे भी जाएगा,
Chanting में विशेष रूप से जो chanting का लोग और
माइंड को इंडिकेशन मिल जाता है कि अभी हमको घूमने जाना है. Okay, so Prabhupada writes, to prepare oneself for the better next life, one must get out of one's so-called home. That is the first thing. Modern civilization is based on family comforts, highest standard of amenities, and therefore, after retirement, everyone expects to live a very comfortable life in a well-furnished home, decorated with fine ladies and children, without any desire to get out. That's how material life is. And then Prabhupada writes, because of this, one gets bound by the illusions of the world, the glamour of the world, and materialistic man doesn't want to leave till the last breath of life. Prabhupada writes in some purports that, even all the politicians, either they are killed or they are there till the last breath. Prabhupada writes, one should not become complacent. The principle is that one should take it for granted that death warning is already there. Even prior to the attainment of 50 years, death warning is already there. There are various warnings nature gives. Just get out. Now time is, getting up. First the hair starts becoming white, then the joint starts fading, then hair starts falling. All these are the indications given by the nature. Now it is time to give up. But the problem is, the more these indications come, just like on a traffic light, yellow hota hai to slow karna chahiye na. But when it is yellow, people speed up. Abhi red hone wala hai, abhi nikalna hai. So that's how these are the indications. Abhi slow down. But nahi, abhi to aur jaldi karna padega na, abhi time nikal raha hai. So that is how the mentality of the world is. They don't want to understand the value of human form. The holy places are all over the world are meant for the residential purposes of retired persons getting ready for the better next life. That's how the holy places are meant for. One is recommended to quit home just to get rid of material attachment. One should not become self-complacent simply by living home and creating another home at holy place, either lawfully or unlawfully. Prabhupada doesn't leave anything. चलो वृंदावन में जाएंगे, आराम से मायापुर में रहेंगे. वहां पे भी comfortable life के लिए नहीं जाना है आपको. Either lawfully or unlawfully, you should not create another home at holy place just to live peacefully. अभी तो हम ब्रजवासी हो गए ना, हम बनाएंगे आपको ब्रजवासी. That is not the mood. Prabhupada was staying in Vrindavan. He left Vrindavan to preach. So of course, it is recommended to go to Vrindavan and live there. But the purpose of living in a dham should always be in forefront of our consciousness. And then Prabhupada, doesn't leave any chance. Many people leave home and go to holy places, but due to bad association, again become family men by illicit connection with opposite sex. Illusory energy is so strong that one is apt to be under such illusion at every stage of life. So one cannot be free from this illusion at any stage. one of our devotees, he's like 60 years old, ये ब्रह्मचारी हैं, तो वो वृंदावन में गए. So one lady proposed him at 60 years also. So he was telling them, वृंदावन में भी लोग छोड़ते नहीं है, 60 साल हो गया फिर भी ऐसे चल रहा है. So that's how, illusions are everywhere. Therefore, it is essential that one practice self-control by celibacy. Okay, so Prabhupada focuses on this word dhiraha. Dhira means celibate. And then 17th verse describes pranayam in more detail. Abhyasen manasa shuddham evrit brahmacharam param mano yacchejita shwaso smaran.
After sitting in the above manner, make the mind remember the three transcendental letters A, O, M, and by regulating the breathing process, control the mind so as not to forget the transcendental seed.
That is the process of pranayam the Ashtanga yogi has to do. So then Prabhupada emphasizes on this mind, how the mind can be controlled. So that's how the pranavayu is the connection between the gross body and the subtle body. Therefore, when the mind gets disturbed, it is recommended that take deep breaths. That's why pranayam makes the mind peaceful. And then again, Prabhupada writes, mind is not to be killed. Mind or desire cannot be stopped. But to develop a desire to function for self-realization, the quality of engagement has to be changed. The mind is the pivot of active sense organs. Bhagavad Gita also says, adhisthaya manaschayam shrutram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam ghranam evacha adhisthaya manaschayam. Mind is the center of all the sense objects, senses. So these are not, gross senses. ये जो श्लोक है ना 15 chapter, ये जो Bhagavad Gita का Shrutram Chakshu Sparshana, will see in this second canto, there are some gross senses and subtle senses. So the gross eye is called Netra, but the subtle eye is called as Chakshu. So हम लोग बोलते हैं चक्षुदान दिलो जयी. That is not a gross eye, that is subtle eye. The gross nose is Nasika. Subtle is called as Ghrana. Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam cha Rasanam Ghrana. All these are the subtle senses which are mentioned in that verse. So mind is the center of all the subtle senses. Because when the body dies, the gross senses are there. Gross nose, gross tongue, everything is there. But the mind, subtle senses and intelligence go to the next body. So therefore, mind is the pivot. It's a pivot. And as such, if the quality of thinking, feeling, and willing is changed, naturally the quality of actions will also change. So that is how we have to change the quality of our thinking, feeling, and that's what we are trying to do by this process of Krishna consciousness. We are trying to change the quality of our thoughts, quality of our feelings, quality of our desires. And then Prabhupada describes something about Omkara. Okay, and then Prabhupada in the end, last few lines, Prabhupada writes that devotees directly fix their minds on the person. So they are not interested in chanting Om and then realizing, Bhagavan. So Bhagavad Gita describes first 6 chapters, they describe the knowledge of soul. Second, then 7 to 12 chapters describe knowledge of Bhagavan. Then in the 12th chapter, what is the first question Arjuna asks? Which is better? Yeah. So Chakravarti Thakur describes what's the first verse? Which is better? In between impersonal and personal. 12.1. So Chakravarti Thakur writes, basically what he is asking, please tell me which I should practice. Should I first become self-realized and then meditate on Bhagavan? Or first should I become Bhagavan realized And where should I start? So Krishna tells, first practice Bhakti Yoga. First practice, realize Bhagwan, and then self-realization will automatically follow. So we in Krishna consciousness, we are first focusing on Bhagwan realization, then self-realization comes automatically. Okay. Atma. Atma realization. First 6 chapters describe Atma, na? Second chapter may describe in detail about Atma, Atma Sakshatkar. So first Atma Sakshatkar kare ya Ishvara Sakshatkar kare. So he says,
Brahman realization and Paramatma realization.
yeah, Brahman and Paramatma, they are the same. Brahman realized means Paramatma realized.
Okay.
Because Paramatma, the Ashtanga yogis, they focus on Paramatma and their goal is to merge in Brahman. They see the Lord who is there in the heart as Paramatma and they become attached to the Paramatma. But, 12 chapter, Kapila describes in the 27th verse. Evam manah karma vasham niyunte avidyayatman nyupadhiyamane pritirnaya. No, sorry. Another verse. So, the last. So, in that he says, this Ashtanga yogi, after meditating on the Lord, he gets attached to the Lord, and then with great difficulty, he takes his mind away from the Lord and focuses on Brahman. He's an unfortunate yogi. So after describing all the, Sanchintayet Bhagavatas Charanar Vindam se leke, Hasam Harere Havanata Kilaloka Tibra. So in that, the next verse says, I'm not remembering that verse. So that is unfortunate yogi. He cannot develop relationship with the Lord because he is still attached to Brahman. Okay. Then 18th verse describes Pratyahar and Dharana. Niyached Vishayebhyokshan Manasa Buddhi Sarathi Manah Karma Virakshiptam Shubharthe Dharayedhya.
Gradually, as the mind becomes progressively spiritualized, withdraw it from sense activities and the intelligence of senses to be controlled. The mind too absorbed in material activities can be engaged in the studies of the personality of body and become fixed in full transcendental consciousness.
Evam haro bhagavati pratilabdha. I was searching that verse. Tachapichitta badisham shanakair viyunkte. Very gradually he takes the mind out of that form of the Lord. That is the Ashtanga. Okay, in this verse, Niyached Vishayebhyokshan. So then he does Pratyahar. What is Pratyahar? Withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. Gradually, as the mind becomes spiritualized, it gets withdrawn from the sense objects. Manasa, Buddhi, Sarathi. And by the intelligence, the senses will be controlled. Intelligence is a Sarathi. The famous analogy given in the Katha Upanishad. That body is compared to a chariot, intelligence is a Sarathi. So therefore, Buddhi Sarathi. So the intelligence controls the senses now. Manah Karamabhirakshiptam. So in this way, the mind, which is too much absorbed in material activities, Karamabhir Akshiptam, Shubha Arthe Dharayed, for the sake of the Lord. Shubha Arthe. For the sake of the Lord, for the sake of connecting to the Lord, the mind should be detached. Shubha Arthe, the auspicious object. So what is that auspicious object? Shukdev Goswami is not told yet. What is that auspicious object? Shubha Arthe, that he will reveal later, when Parikshit Maharaj will ask. Parikshit Maharaj will ask that, what is that auspicious object you are talking about? So then he'll describe the process of devotional service. So mind becomes too absorbed in material activities. So it is so very difficult because millions of lifetimes mind has acquired so many impressions. So it is not so easy to take the mind out of the sense gratificatory desires. But by this process of ashtanyam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar, then gradually the mind will be spiritualized. Then Prabhupada writes in the purport, the first process of spiritualizing is by chanting this pranava, omkar. Pranava sarva vedeshu. That omkar is the sound representation of the Lord. And that is called as pranayam. The ultimate stage of this pranayam is samadhi. And then Prabhupada, he tells, ये सब कलयुग में चलता नहीं है. Vishwamitra also fell down. He tells the whole story. So therefore, after a few lines, Prabhupada writes, therefore, Shukdev Goswami recommends the next step of assured policy, namely to fix one's mind in the service of the Lord. Prabhupada doesn't wait for Shukdev Goswami to come and ले आगे चल के पढ़ेगा नहीं पढ़ेगा मालूम नहीं अभी बोल देता हूँ मैं, so Prabhupada never waits. That's how he does always. He मतलब कुछ सस्पेंस रहने नहीं देते आगे क्या होगा, पूरा स्टोरी पहले ही बता देते, because he knows Kali Yuga mind. And then he quotes 6.47. Yoginam api sarvesham madgyatenantara. That is the best, that is the safest and the surest path of progress, even for the disturbed mind. Okay, then 19th verse, it describes. So this 18th verse describes pratyahar and dharana. Pratyahar and dharana is described there.
What is the word dharana?
Pratyahar, dharana, dhyan and samadhi. So dharana means meditating on the generalized form of the Lord. Dhyan means meditating on each and every limb of the Lord. So Kapil Dev will describe, starting from the lotus feet, that is dhyana. Dharana means meditating on the generalized, पूरे जैसे दूर से आप भगवान को देखते हैं, राधा गिरिधारी को दूर से देखते हैं, हाँ पूरे ग्रह दिख रहे हैं. But you more close, you first see the lotus feet more closely, meditate on that. That is called as dhyana. So dharana is general meditation and dhyan is focused meditation. Okay, then. Then 19th verse describes dhyan and samadhi. So Shukdev Goswami will tell that this is the surest path. Nahi ato anya shiva pantha ishatah samshrita viha vasudeve bhagavati bhakti yogo yato bhavet. That's what he'll tell in the second chapter. There is no path which is better and more safe, more auspicious. Nahi ato anya shiva. Shiva means auspicious. Isse shubh aur kuch nahi hai. That's why one of the qualities of devotional service is bhakti is नहीं
Auspicious.
शुभ है लेकिन उसका नाम कुछ अलग है. Shubhada. It gives auspiciousness. It's the most auspicious. There are 4 aspects of the Shubhada. Goswami describes. First is Priranam. It benefits everyone. Second, Sarva Jagatam Anuraktata. It attracts everyone. Third, Shadgunadi Pradatvam. It creates good qualities. And fourth, Sukha Pradatvam. It gives highest level of happiness. So nothing is more auspicious than it is the safest path. Then 19th verse describes dhyan and samadhi. Tatraikavayavam dhyayet abhyucchinnena chetasa mano nirvishayam yuktva tatah kinchana nasmaret padam tat paramam vishno mano yatra prasidati.
Thereafter, you should meditate upon the limbs of Vishnu, one after another, without being deviated from the conception of the complete body. Thus, the mind becomes free from all sense objects. There should be no other thing to thought upon, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu is the ultimate truth. The mind becomes completely reconciled with him only.
First and second line describe dhyana, and third, fourth, fifth describes samadhi, and the last line gives the conclusion. What will the effect of a person being in samadhi? तत्रैक एक एक अवयवम ध्यायेत्, एक एक अंग पे ध्यान करना है, that is called as ध्यान. अव्युच्छिन्नेन चेतसा, without being deviated. Abhyuchinena, with focused attention, with focused consciousness, meditate on each and every limb of the Lord. Mano nirvishayam tyaktva. In this way, mind will not become contaminated by sense objects. Tatah kinchinna smaret. It does not remember anything else. There should be no other thing to be thought upon. That is called as dhyana. No other thought comes in the mind of a yogi who is at the stage of samadhi. So when our yogi does dhyan, then he reaches the stage of samadhi. Samadhi means there is no other thought than meditating on the form of the Lord. So Chakravarti Thakur writes, then the seventh stage is meditation, dhyana. One should meditate on each and every limb. So in that Chakravarti Thakur writes, dharana means mind steady by, dharana makes the mind steady by concentration on the Lord in general, and dhyan is a more complete steadiness of the mind produced by contemplating on the limbs of the Lord. एक एक अंग पे ध्यान करेंगे तो उसको बोलते हैं ध्यान, meditation, fixed meditation, and that is called as uninterrupted consciousness, avyucchinnena chetasa. So if somebody is doing like this, then he reaches the 8th stage of samadhi. So then Prabhupada writes in the purport, foolish people, they do not know the ultimate goal of life is to search for Krishna, search for the Supreme Lord. And then he describes how this meditation should begin from the lotus feet. One should not directly go to the lotus face of the Lord. One should gradually keep on meditating. And Kapila Dev in that section says one should meditate on the lotus feet for a long time. Dhyaye chiram bhagavatas charanara vindam chiram. For a long time we should meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord. Then here in this verse, it is definitely assured that Supreme Lord is not impersonal. So Prabhupada he never leaves a chance to defeat Mayavad. Wherever मतलब कुछ भी इतना सा भी है तो Prabhupada will describe ये यहाँ पे है ना मायावाद नहीं. This is how Lord is person, because that's how a devotee is. He cannot tolerate his Lord being somebody tells her Lord has no form. Devotee cannot tolerate this. He is a person. If somebody is meditating on the form, that means he is a person. Otherwise, meditation beginning from Omkar up to the limbs of the personal body of Vishnu would not have been recommended by Shukadeva Goswami. That's how. Then Prabhupada writes, common man can benefit after 10 lines, I think. Common man can benefit more by meditating on the form of Vishnu. So Prabhupada now brings the point to the general understanding that ye to Ashtanga yogi jungle mein baith ke kar rahe hain. Now people who are staying in city, what they will do? They should go to temple and worship the form of the Lord. That is easy for anyone. Anyone can do that. Common man can benefit more by meditating on the form of Vishnu in temple than on Omkar. That is how. Because meditating on Omkar is more difficult. Okay, then. So that's how the Ashtanga yogi progresses in his path. So after this, Shukadeva Goswami says, if after reaching the stage of dharana, still the mind is not pure, tab kya karna hai? Again, even if the person reaches the stage of dhyana, still the mind has desires. He should go back to dharana. Meditate on general form more. Then after the mind gets purified, then one should come to the stage of dhyana. That's what he tells in the 20th verse. Rajas tamobhyam akshiptam
Shiksham
atmanaha
Atmana
Aranaya Dhiro
Dharanaya
Antiya Tatkritam Phalam.
Antiya Tatkritam
One's mind is always agitated by the passionate mode of material nature and bewildered by the ignorant mode of nature. But one can rectify such conceptions by the relation of Vishnu and thus become pacified by cleansing the dirty things created by them.
That's how, as the Ashtanga Yogi starts meditating on the form of the Lord, he comes to the stage of dhyana. But if the mind is still not pure, he has to go back to dharana, because it is not so easy to meditate on the Lord continuously, because mind is absorbed in rajoguna and tamogum. Rajas tamobhyam akshiptam. Mind is absorbed. Vimudham mana atmanaha, and therefore gets bewildered by the modes. What we should do, what that yogi should do, yached dharanaya dhiro. Meditate on the generalized form of the Lord more. Make the dharana form. And then slowly and gradually, Hanti yatat kritambalam, his mind will become cleansed. So that's how it is very important. The goal of the Ashtanga Yogi is to merge in Brahman, but he has to meditate on the form of the Lord. So this is an element of bhakti. Any path without bhakti doesn't give results. Bhakti is the active ingredient which gives results. In jnana, in Ashtanga Yoga, in karma, bhakti is the active ingredient. Otherwise, they'll not get the results. So that is how this Ashtanga Yogi progresses in his, perfection, path to perfection. Prabhupada writes in the purport. But persons generally conducted by the modes of passion and ignorance cannot be bona fide candidates for being situated in transcendental stage of God realization. Only persons conducted by mode of goodness can have knowledge of Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada always gives an example. Mode of goodness is like a proper platform. It is like an airport from where we can take off. Flight to Goloka will take off from airport only, na? So mode of goodness is the proper platform, proper runway on which we can run our plane, and then it will take off. But if somebody is attached to mode of passion and ignorance, then he cannot practice bhakti with determination. Where in Bhagavad Gita Krishna says this? If somebody is attached to sinful life, he will not be able to practice bhakti with determination. Only a person who has given up all the sinful activities can practice bhakti with determination. Yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrata. Therefore, unless one is free from all these sinful lives, and then he says, one who is too much attached to wealth and women can rectify their leanings only by constant remembrance. Bhog Aishwarya Prasadatanam Daya Parita Chetsam Vyavasayatmika Buddhi Samadho Na Vidhiyate. The more one gets attached to the modes of passion and ignorance, he cannot practice bhakti with determination. So Prabhupada focuses on this. So that's how Ashtanga Yogi, he practices, starts from yam, niyam, asana, pranayam, he reaches samadhi, gets darshan of the Lord in the heart, he experiences ecstatic symptoms. All his limbs become ecstatic. He starts developing ecstatic features. Shweta, Kampa, Romanch, Ashru, Gadgada, Vaivarnya, Unmad, Vishad, Garva, Harsha, Dainya, all these are ecstatic symptoms which appear in the body of this Ashtanga Yogi. Hair standing on end, tears, cannot speak anything, his voice is choked up. But he is still attached to Brahman. So gradually he withdraws the mind from the form of the Lord and focuses on Brahman. So that's how, Chakravarti Thakur writes that although he's experiencing such symptoms, but these are not pure symptoms. These are called as Chhaya Rati Abhas, a nectar of devotion. Chhaya Rati Abhas tha kuch to, or Pratibimb Rati Abhas. You see, there are some people who come, new people, and they take darshan of Lord, start crying. हम लोग 20 साल से हो गए अभी तक आंसू नहीं आया. And day one में he is crying. क्या चल रहा है ये? So वहाँ पे रूप गोस्वामी describes what is this? This is not actual rati. This is not bhav. This is abhas. And this abhas comes when that person is surrounded by people who have devotion in their heart. That gets reflected. इसलिए उसको बोलते हैं प्रतिबिंब or chhaya. So after getting darshan of the Lord, tug of war starts in the mind of this Ashtanga yogi. Should I develop relationship with the Lord, or should I enter Brahman? Because the motive of a jnani to renounce this world is so much of problems, so many problems. Itna pitai hua hai, I don't want any relationship. All relationships in this world are painful. And they lived happily ever after, kabhi hota nahi. So he has been beaten so much, I don't want any relationship. Then he gets darshan of the Lord, thinks, इनके साथ अभी relationship बनाना है. He remembers all that. पिटाई. This is नहीं बनाना है relationship. So gradually he withdraws the mind and focuses on Brahman. After getting into Brahman, and then after many lives, Krishna says, Bahunam Janmanam Ante. वो जन्मों के बाद वो ज्ञानी को समझता है भगवान से संबंध बनाएंगे तो it will be no problem, all bliss. So that's the advantage of becoming a devotee. So जिसको इतना मार खाके then he comes to bhakti, then he realizes what is this devotional service. Our problem is not problem. Our fortune is we have come to the process of bhakti so easily. We think इतनी आसानी से मिल जाना ठीक है. No, we don't. No, we not value it. यूयम्ने लोके भतभूरि भागा लोकम पुनाना मुनयो भियन्ति येषां गृहाणा वसतीति साक्षात् गूढ़ं परम ब्रह्म मानुष्य लिंगम. Sometimes great devotees also think हमारे जीवन में तो कुछ ही नहीं अच्छा लगता है. Yudhishthir Maharaj is thinking after hearing Prahlad and Narsimhadev story, एक devotee के लिए एक भगवान अवतार लिए, मेरे लिए तो कोई आ ही नहीं रहा. Narad Muni is telling, do you know how fortunate you are? You are the most fortunate personality in this entire human society. Yuyam nirloke, narlok में सबसे भाग्यशाली आप ही हैं. The great sages, they are doing tapasya for many lifetimes. तब जाके उनको चरण के नख के दर्शन होते हैं. And that same Lord is staying in your house, and he is becoming your chariot driver, your सारथी, your messenger, your सब कुछ कर रहे हैं आप. And you are saying मेरा क्या भाग्य. That's how we have to understand our fortune. So all these things should make us more grateful and more aware of our fortune. ये ज्ञानी को इतना बहुनाम जन्मनामन्ते घूमने के बाद पता चलता है कि वासुदेवम सर्वम. हमको क्या प्रसाद खा क्या अपने आप पता चल गया. So that is how fortunate we are. Okay.
Why Yudhishthira Maharaj say like this?
Every devotee goes through these phases. Because many times, that's why it is recommended that we should always remember what we have received. There's a wonderful statement. One becomes dissatisfied not when he sees what he doesn't have, but when he doesn't see what he has. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. मतलब असंतुष्ट कब होता है व्यक्ति? जब उसको देखता है ये नहीं है मेरे पास, वो देख के संतुष्टि कम होती है. जो उसके पास है वो नहीं देखेगा ना तो ज्यादा असंतुष्ट होता है. We have got this wonderful process of Krishna consciousness and we think अपने पास कुछ ही नहीं लगता है ना. 16 माला करने में प्रॉब्लम है. देखो ये ब्रह्म कुमारी वाले इतने शांति से बैठे हैं. हम लोग को यहाँ पे अशांति है. सेवा में अशांति, जपा में अशांति, सेवा करने के बाद फिर डांट खाओ उसमें भी अशांति. That अशांति is better. तोमार सेवाय दुख होए जत सेयो तो परम सुख सेवा सुख दुख परम संपद नाशय अविद्या दुख। तो वो दुख बेटर है सुख से। That's how it is. Okay, so then in the purport, Prabhupada describes about the impersonalists. Generally, the impersonalists are influenced by modes of passion and ignorance. Such impersonalists think of themselves as liberated souls. Prabhupada is paraphrasing one verse here. They think of themselves as liberated souls. Yanye arvindaksha vimukta maninaha aruhya krichhre param padam pada patanti adha. It's a very common verse. Prabhupada quotes many times. Impersonalists, they think themselves liberated. विमुक्त मानिना मान लेते हैं कि हम मुक्त हो गए हैं, although they are not liberated, because they don't take shelter of Lord, they fall down from their position. They have no knowledge of the transcendental personal feature of the Lord. Actually, they are impure in heart on account of being devoid of knowledge of personal feature. Prabhupada writes in many places, in Bhagavad Gita also, Bhagavatam also, what's the last snare of Maya? You heard, read any time this verse? बहुत बार, 4-5 बार प्रभुपाद लिखे हैं, last snare of Maya. What is the last snare of Maya for a
You are supreme.
consider yourself as supreme, to become one with the Lord. After getting frustrated from all the things in this world, getting frustrated from becoming controller, he thinks I am God. That's the last snare. And then Prabhupada quotes the same verse, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Gyanavan Mam Prapadyate. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that after many, many births, impersonal philosopher surrenders. Prabhupada is paraphrasing that. So paragraph ki last few lines we are reading. To acquire such a qualification of God realization in personal features, the neophyte impersonalist is given a chance to realize the relation of Lord in everything by the philosophy of pantheism. Pantheism means to see God everywhere. That is called as pantheism. Nature is God. That is pantheism. See God in nature. Nature is God. You know, many people say nature is God. Many people say God is light, God is nature, God is love. Different conceptions. Nature is God. That is pantheism. Okay. Okay, next verse. Yasyam sandharyamanaayam lakshanaha
Bhakti Lakshana.
yoga
By this system of prayer, by being fixed because seeing the all good person, one can very soon attain devotional service to the Lord under his direct shelter.
So then, so what Shukdev Goswami is doing, he said, यम नियम आसन प्राणायाम प्रत्याहार धारणा और ध्यान पे पहुंच गए, still the mind is not pure, go back to dharana. And after the dharana gets purified, in the 21st verse he says, such a yogi who steadies his dharana quickly achieves liberation. तो जब तक धारणा फिक्स नहीं होगा, he'll not attain liberation. That's how it is described. That's how Ashtanga Yogi, he becomes purified in his consciousness and then he becomes liberated. So that's how this is the path of Jnana Marga. So although these yogis, they are meditating on the Lord, but their object of meditation is Paramatma, but their objective is Brahman. That's how it is described that even in Vaikuntha, there are various levels of people. That is how our acharyas they say. Not all are completely devoted, eager to serve the Lord. There are two types of Vaikuntha liberation. Prema Sevottar Mukti and Sukha Aishwarya Sevottar Mukti. Sukha Aishwaryottar Mukti. So in that Sukha Aishwaryottar Mukti, the predominant desire of a living being is to experience happiness and opulence. And for that he is ready to serve the Lord also. He'll serve the Lord, लेकिन इच्छा क्या है? Aishwarya, Sukha or Aishwarya. These type of people are also there in Vaikuntha. And there is something called as Prema Sevottar. They have no other desires but to serve the Lord. That's how these various gradations of people are everywhere. चाहे ज्ञान मार्ग ले लो, वैकुंठ में भी जाएंगे तो ऐसा है, गोलोक में ऐसा नहीं. But Vaikuntha also there are these two types of people, living entities. So in this section, Bhakti Mishra Gyan is described, right? So in Bhagavad Gita, there are two terms. Baldev Vidyakshan describes Pradhani Bhuta Bhakti and Guni Bhuta Bhakti. Next, Pradhani Bhuta Bhakti, Guni Bhuta Bhakti. So sabne suna hai, terms are a little different. Pradhani Bhuta means when the Bhakti is Pradhan. Karma Mishra Bhakti, common word, that is called as Pradhani Bhuta. Pradhan क्या है? Bhakti Pradhan है. Either karma ho ya jnana ho ya ashtang ho, bhakti is pradhan. Karma mishra bhakti means bhakti is predominant. Jnana mishra bhakti, bhakti is predominant. Yoga mishra bhakti, bhakti is predominant. उसका technical term है pradhani bhuta bhakti. प्रधान है भक्ति. ऐसे ही technical term ही आने वाले हैं BSc में भी. And the Guni Bhuta Bhakti means Bhakti subordinate. Bhakti Mishra Karma, Bhakti Mishra Jnana, Bhakti Mishra Yoga, Bhakti hai, thoda sa. So all these processes are mixed with Bhakti. या तो प्राधानी भूता भक्ति हो या गुणी भूता भक्ति हो, भक्ति रहने ही वाली है. Without Bhakti, nobody will get the result.
So, Prabhuji, there is no existence of pure jnana, pure karma, no?
No. There is no keval gyan. Keval gyan nahi hota hai kuch. You know, he'll not get the result. Shreya shrutim bhakti mudasyate vibho klishyantiye keval bodha labdhaye tesham asau kleshal eva shishyate nanyat yatha sthul tushavaghatinam. This is a prayer by Brahmaji, 10th canto mein bol rahe hain. If somebody is practicing gyan and he is not meditating on the Lord, he will not get the result. It is like beating the empty husks of the rice. Kuch nahi niklega usme se, you know. So Gyan should always be having Bhakti element. Dharana dhyan kis pe karega? On the form of the Lord, that is Bhakti. Okay. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, in the 21st verse, Yasyam Sandharyamananam Manayam Yogino Bhakti Lakshana. Yasyam Sandharyamanayam, O King, by this system of remembrance, and by being fixed in the habit of seeing the Lord, yogino bhakti lakshanaha. So this is very important. Bhakti lakshan. Bhakti has to be there. If a Ashtanga yogi is not practicing bhakti, he will not get the result. So all these Mayavadis, they say we meditate on Brahman. There is nothing like that in scriptures. Brahman meditation hai nahi. Meditation on the form of the Lord to get Brahman. That is a process. Meditating on impersonal light, that is not the case, you know. So one of the organizations, they have their meditation. Some closed room में candle जला के meditate करते हैं candle.
मैं देखा है.
So one devotee was saying, वो बोल रहे थे शांति मिलता है, अच्छा लगता है, fresh लगता है. Devotee से अरे आधा घंटा सोएगा तो fresh ही लगेगा. ऐसे रूम में आराम से पूरा डार्क है तो सोएगा ही ना, आधा घंटा fresh लगेगा. Prabhupada writes, success of mystic performance is achieved only by the help of devotional service. devotional service is the active ingredient. That is always the case. Even in the jnana, even in the ashtanga, even in the karma. Yagyarthat karmana anyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. Tadartham karma bandhana. What is this? Offer your karma to Lord. जब तक भक्ति नहीं आएगा उसमें उसका रिजल्ट नहीं मिलेगा. Okay, pantheism or system of feeling the presence of Almighty everywhere is a sort of training the mind to become accustomed to devotional conception. So what is this 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita? Vibhuti Yoga. Seeing the Lord everywhere. That is how we have to train the mind. Prabhupada tells a story. Prabhupada tells many times. If a parent sees the shoes of the child, what does they remember? Child. So if you see my spectacles, what do you remember? Prabhupada would say, you remember me. Similarly, we have to connect everything to Krishna. Any vibhuti in this world. So all these vibhutis which are mentioned in the 10th chapter, many of us, we may not have heard this. Just to, have the practical understanding, apply this in our lives. Whatever big things and attractive things we see in this world, of the cricketers, of the film stars, jo bhi hai, whatever attracts us in this world, connected to Krishna. So that is called as pantheism. One is not, however, elevated to such a successful status without the tinge of mixture in devotional service. Prabhupada is writing again and again, Bhakti is the active ingredient. Bhakti ke bina kuch nahi hoga. Devotional atmosphere. There is a whole chapter, right? Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu mein. Devotional service is it is independent of jnana and karma. There is a whole chapter. In that, Rupa Goswami gives quotations after quotations, how Bhakti is independent and all the other paths depend on Bhakti. Devotional atmosphere created by pantheistic vision develops into devotional service in later days. And that is the only benefit for the impersonalist. और कुछ benefit नहीं है. क्लेशो अधिकतरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्ता सक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गति दुःखम्. Prabhupada quotes that. So, after hearing all this, Parikshit Maharaj asks a question, asks 3 questions. Yes, Prabhu.
Here, Bhakti is independent of jnana and karma.
Yes.
That means if we doesn't know anything, if we take name of the Lord.
What is this? What is this jnana?
See, jnana means I'm not.
What is the definition of bhakti? Pure devotional service?
Pardon?
Pure devotional service का definition क्या है? आगे?
Jnana karma
And what are we doing? हम लोग क्या कर रहे हैं? भक्ति वैभव भक्ति शास्त्री क्या है?
ज्ञान.
So what is that ज्ञान? ज्ञान कर्मादि अनावृतम. It is not ज्ञान कर्मादि शून्यम. मतलब वो रूप भक्ति रसामृत सिंधु को अच्छे से पढ़ना है तो उसके लिए 1 साल लगेगा. हमने भक्ति शास्त्री में खाली पढ़ लिया भाई. लास्ट का तो 4-5 चैप्टर तो ऐसा आप अपने आप पढ़ लीजिए. हम आपके लिए भी आउट ऑफ सिलेबस है, हमारे लिए भी आउट ऑफ सिलेबस है. वो भाव प्रेम वो सब तो. बट इवन द बिगिनिंग चैप्टर्स उसमें there are lots of explanations. रूप गोस्वामी का जो बुक है भक्ति रसामृत सिंधु, भानु महाराज has written a whole commentary, right? इंग्लिश में पूरा ट्रांसलेट किए हैं. वो जीव गोस्वामी का उसके ऊपर कमेंट्री है. उसको बोलते हैं दुर्गम संगमनी टीका. रूप गोस्वामी का भक्ति रसामृत सिंधु पे जीव गोस्वामी has written a commentary. So elaborately he has described. ये एक वर्ड का उन्होंने ऐसा चीरफाड़ करके एनालिसिस करके बताया. ये इधर अन्य अभिलाषिता क्यों बोला है, अन्य अभिलाषा क्यों नहीं बोला है, मालूम है? Why Rupa Goswami used the word अन्य अभिलाषिता शून्यम? Why not अन्य अभिलाषा शून्यम?
The desires for self-maintenance is included.
Desire for self-maintenance and desire for maintenance of near and dear ones. Somebody prays to Krishna, please protect my children, please protect my wife, husband. Oh, that doesn't make one impure devotee, which devotee? That is included. So this jnana, which is mentioned here, there are three types of jnana: Atma Gyan, Ishwar Gyan, and Keval Gyan. So what are we doing? We are cultivating Atma Gyan and Ishwar Gyan. We are not interested in Keval Gyan. Keval means knowledge of impersonal Brahman. That is a bona fide branch. Oh, Mayavad nahi hai. Mayavad means rejecting the form of the Lord. We are not rejecting the form of the Lord. Brahmavadis, what is the difference between Brahmavadi and Mayavadi? Basic fundamental principle.
Brahmavadi accepts the form of Brahman.
And
Mayavadi doesn't accept.
Yes.
They say they are Nirakara.
the Brahmavadis, they accept that Lord has a form, but I am more attached to impersonal Brahman. Just like four Kumaras and Shukdev Goswami, they were Brahmavadis. So why this impersonal Gyan is not favorable? Because it makes the heart hard. Because it is only dealing with saying no to things of the world, no to all the relationships, and becoming inert. No relationships. So no relationship means no relationship with Krishna also. So that's how we are not interested in Kevala Gyan. We are interested in Gyan. नहीं तो हम क्या कर रहे हैं? Bhakti Vaibhav Bhakti Shastra. What is this? This is
What is the
Gyan.
meaning of independent of Gyan?
Gyan means जब तक ज्ञान कल्टिवेट नहीं करेंगे तब तक भक्ति नहीं आएगा. वो नहीं है. Even if somebody is not Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav student, still he is practicing Bhakti. Bhakti will generate Jnana and Vairagya automatically.
Means when you chant,
It doesn't-
this Gyan and Vairagya will come.
It will come automatically.
Yeah.
Okay, so now after this, Shukdev Parikshit Maharaj asks three questions in 22nd verse.
That's why you feel like it's important to read Shastra that whatever it is. You feel like Bhakti is the heart.
These two things are complementary. It is not that if I cannot read, I am illiterate. Okay, you just chant and hear. Reading doesn't mean just reading. Hearing also. If you cannot read, hear. We have to hear something. So all these great devotees, they have heard from their teachers. तो पढ़ नहीं सकते तो सुन सकते हैं. And if we can read, we should read. That's why Prabhupada has written all these books, so that we become more and more strong in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Dhant balya jeev chitte nakar alas, iha haite Krishna lagi sudrida manas. We should not be lazy in understanding the philosophy, because this philosophy protects us, sustains us. So therefore, we get nourished by this philosophy. We get nourished by the pastimes of the Lord. For pure devotees, this is like nectar. For a sadhaka, it is like medicine. So we have to take the medicine regularly so that we become cleansed from all the material desires. Okay, so now three questions he is asking in the 22nd verse. You said, "Oh Shukdev Goswami, you have to this Ashtanga Yogi accomplishes dharana." How this dharana is accomplished? And what is the dharana ashraya? Kiske upar dhyan karna hai? Shukdev Goswami didn't tell, right? So now he asks, what is dharana ashraya? The word used is dharana ashraya. Chakravarti Thakur likhte hain isme. He writes, what is dharana ashraya? What is the ashraya? What is the object of meditation? And third, how to quickly remove the contaminations of mind? These are the three questions he is asking. Rajo vacha yatha sandharyate brahman
यदा धार्यते ब्रह्मन्
dharanayatra sammata
सम्मता
haredashu
राजसेवापरिग्रासु
manomalam.
पुरुषमनोबलम्.
The fortunate king Parikshit, inquiring further, said, "O Brahmana, please describe in full detail how and where the mind has to be applied, how the conception can be fixed, so that dirty things in a person's mind can be removed."
Okay, so these are the three questions. So now the description of Virat Rupa is about to start. So in the second canto and third canto, 5 times this Virat Rupa description comes. First in this chapter. And every time the reason is different. ऐसा नहीं था सुखदेव गोस्वामी को कोई सूझा नहीं टॉपिक तो चलो वही रिपीट कर देते. No, he had different reasons. So first in this chapter, why he is describing Virat Rupa as the object, as the dharana ashray of a attached yogi. There are two types of yogis. एक attached yogi है, detached yogi. If you have Subodhini with you, there is a nice pictorial presentation there. The dharana ashray of an attached yogi and a detached yogi. So after doing yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar, if the mind becomes cleansed, then he can meditate on the Paramatma. But if the mind is not cleansed, he should meditate on Virat Rupa. So these are the two different dharana ashrayas. एक attached yogi, मतलब जिनकी अभी भी इच्छाएं बची हैं, his mind is not cleansed of the material desires, he should meditate on Virat Rupa. The dharana ashraya, the object of meditation for an attached yogi, is Virat Rupa. An object of meditation of a detached yogi is Paramatma. वहाँ पे मिल गया पिक्चर
24 to 39 description of Virat Rupa.
ये वहाँ पे एक पिक्चर में बना के अच्छे से क्या दिया हुआ है.
ये वाला
I think second chapter में दिया होगा.
second chapter ही है. Second chapter. I believe.
Okay, so second chapter में Subodhini में second chapter में there is a pictorial presentation of what is being described here. So after going through yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar, if the mind becomes cleansed of all the material desires, then this yogi meditates on Paramatma. धारणा आश्रय कौन है उनके? परमात्मा. इनके ऊपर ध्यान कर रहे हैं परमात्मा. क्लियर? आगे बढ़ेंगे.